over the last few weeks, a lot of observers, analysts, brokerages, even global outfits have started bringing down growth for 2023, even for India. So they're saying that we'll get 7% plus growth in 2022. But in 23, some are already at 6.3%, 6.4%, and one or two have gone down all the way to 5.5% for 2023. Is that being alarmist, or do you think that might come to pass?
I'm not sure why people have sort of turned pessimistic, or rather somewhat downbeat for growth in 23-24 as far as India is concerned compared to 22-23. I can try and guess why they have done so, partly because they think the post-pandemic catch-up having been over, then there will be more moderate growth given global conditions, weak external demand, etc. But even then, I think there is an underestimation of the fact that India's potential growth is not as low as many of them might be thinking. The reason why they have probably, and this is my guess here, why they have probably lowered India's potential growth, and I happened to attend a World Bank seminar on that 2 weeks ago here in Delhi. They look at the last decade's capital formation, and that was obviously a stagnant capital formation scenario in India because companies were trimming their balance sheet, banks were trimming their balance sheet, and we went through a financial system stress. Now, if you take that into consideration and extrapolate on that basis, then potential GDP growth would appear lower. But I actually would argue that on the contrary, because we went through a balance sheet repair phase in the financial sector, both banking and non-banking, and in the corporate sector, once the current uncertainties regarding the pandemic, regarding the conflict in Europe, etc., once they fade slowly over time, I would argue the opposite, that India may be poised to kind of repeat, if not exactly in the same magnitude as we did between 2003 and 2008, India might be poised to repeat some sort of a capital expenditure and credit boom as we experienced in the first decade of the new millennium. Therefore, I am at a loss to understand the pessimism of India's medium-term growth starting from 2023.
No, excellent point. And that is really the crux of the issue, Anand, because all of us have been hoping and dreaming of this resurgence or the revival of this capex cycle, which has been missing over the last decade, but which you are hopeful, and a lot of people are, has already begun to turn. You know, in the last budget as well, the finance minister was trying to do exactly this by shifting resources from revenue expenditure to capital expenditure in the hope that she will do her bit, the government's bit, to crowd in private investment. But let me ask you frankly, what is the evidence of the last 1 year? Do you see substantial evidence that this crowding in of private capex has happened, or to be honest or candid, that it has not happened to the extent that was desirable?
No, I think there are only nascent signs of that at the moment, and the reasons are not hard to find. We were worried about a third wave until this January, and only after January ended we could heave a sigh of relief that the third wave wasn't as severe as we had feared. I'm talking about the pandemic. And as soon as that got over and we had a good budget, which the finance minister unveiled on February 1st, within 3 weeks the conflict started, and for the next 3 months until early June or mid-June, we were witnessing rising commodity oil prices, fertilizer prices, food prices, etc. And simultaneously monetary policy tightening began to happen in the developed world starting from April or so. So naturally, despite the fact that the corporate sector has witnessed rising profitability in 2021 and 21-22, naturally they would pull back and wait to sort of invest until demand conditions became clearer. Therefore, to say that this crowding in hasn't yet materialized is to ignore the fact that we have been buffeted by temporary shocks which were very significant in nature, the pandemic and then the conflict in Europe. And that is why the government is still continuing to focus on its capital expenditure until such time that private sector is willing to go all out and use its improved profitability, improved balance sheet, improved cash position to start investing in a big way. We are beginning to see that in a small way. If you look at the bank credit growth, non-food credit growth, It's now running in double digit for the last 4 months or so. There is an appetite, and the banks and the banking balance sheets are in good shape. There is capital adequacy. Even the RBI's latest financial stability report with its stress test, etc., are showing that banks can withstand the most severe financial stability shocks, etc. So all the underlying conditions or building blocks are in place. But we have to wait for the current uncertainties to dissipate. Then I am confident that the much awaited capital expenditure on the part of the private sector, or what we call the capex cycle, will be evident in the data.